I don't think anybody expected Borderlands to become as big as it is, not even the developers Gearbox. Back when the series didn't even have its signature cel-shaded art style, nobody thought it even had the potential to become the publisher's signature series, let alone influence first-person shooters on the whole. But of course, it did, and the first Borderlands experiment paid off in droves. Consequently, a sequel was inevitable, and this time around, Gearbox went bigger than before, bolstered with confidence, and delivered one of the defining action games of its generation. And this second game is actually one of the games I've personally replayed the most as well. Well, parts of it anyway, let me explain. The game's brand of addictive co-op shooting is so instantly gratifying that it became a co-op game at get-togethers with my friends back in the day. The only problem was, we never actually transferred saves and would have to restart every single time. Even with that familiarity though, there's still so much about this signature sequel that's gone unnoticed. So, strap on your favourite gun and let's dive into Pandora once more. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 things you didn't know about Borderlands 2. Number 10. Guns, guns, and more guns. Borderlands has always been, if you haven't guessed, about the guns, though it's never been clear just how many guns are actually in the games. Tired of simply telling people a lot when they asked how many were included, Borderlands 2 was described as having 87 bazillion guns. That, of course, is just nonsense words, but there is an accurate figure somewhere in there. According to Gearbox Software's CEO Randy Pitchford, the game actually has 17,750,000 different weapons the player can find, buy, or tear out of the cold, dead hands of whatever psycho they just fragged. That's a ridiculously large number, and there's no way a single player could ever find them all. Gearbox apparently upped the budget for development solely to introduce a crazy amount of weapons into the game, and in the end, Borderlands 2 boasts twice as many weapons as its predecessor. Number 9. Though a few guns ended up being cut. Now, as just established in the previous entry, it's pretty obvious that Gearbox took a quantity over quality approach to the weapons they included in the game, which is putting it lightly, but that doesn't mean any old thing made it into the final release without them thinking about it. The developers had a very deliberate set of rules that would help define each weapon both for the players and in the context of the world, and that meant that some guns just didn't make it and had to be found instead in the game's files. One such gun, the error message, was one of these. This is actually a rocket launcher wielded by Master G, and a version of it can be found later on, but that hasn't stopped modders from getting their hands on the authentic thing. It's not even that powerful though, so has instead been picked up by players as something of a collector's item instead. Number 8. Handsome Jack's dialogue was largely ad-libbed. Handsome Jack is the primary villain in the game, and undeniably elevated the sequel to god-tier level. That's partly because he's one of those bad guys that you just love to hate, taunting the player throughout the game over radio chatter that can get, well, a bit weird. Perhaps explaining why Jack felt so distinct though, it turns out that his dialogue was largely ad-libbed by voice actor Damian Clark and not writer Anthony Birch. One famous clip has the character simply saying, "These pretzels suck," which begs the question, why was Clark eating pretzels in the recording booth to start with? Sometimes I eat some crisps before recording one of these voiceovers, and man, let me tell you, it makes them even worse than usual. So for me, yeah, props to him for that one. Clark also went on a long-winded rant about a pony called Butt Stallion as well, which was also thought up on the fly and became one of the most memorable lines from the game. Number 7. Psychos know the Bard. One of the most iconic enemies in the game are the Psychos, partly because they just love to run straight into a stream of gunfire whenever they see the player. But hey, just because they hack their buddies apart and blow themselves up whenever they get the chance, that doesn't mean they don't have an appreciation for the finer things in life. In fact, psychos are actually well-read. Seriously, they enjoy reading and reciting their favourite soliloquy, but more specifically, they really go crazy over Bill Shakespeare's Too Sullied Flesh from Hamlet. What's more, they don't simply just riff on a couple of lines. If left to its own devices, a psycho in Borderlands 2 will belt out the entire 30-line passage. So there, my English teacher from 10 years ago, video games were homework despite what you believed. Number 6. The game connects to another popular franchise. The Borderlands franchise didn't just come out of nowhere. The developers were clearly influenced by other properties, and the Fallout series is one of them. While some might argue the search for a vault across a wild post-apocalyptic style wasteland is Fallout enough, there is a Vault Dweller skin in Borderlands 2 that has to be more than coincidence. The design consists of a blue bodysuit with yellow highlights in specific places, aka the exact same suit all denizens of Fallout's vaults wear. There's another reference to Fallout 3 as well, which featured a radio host and DJ called 3Dog. The game has a bandit shotgun called The Dog, but the file name is spelled THRE, Dog. And the description reads, because one barrel ain't enough and two is too few, which riffs on the explanation for the DJ's name in Fallout 3 being, because one dog ain't enough and two is too low. Number 5, there are literary allusions as well. There's no way you picked up a controller to play Borderlands 2 and thought that it resembled J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. I mean, how could the two franchises be connected in any way? Well, as it happens, there is a very clear homage to Tolkien's magnum opus, and it's rather genius. When you finish up the Where Angels Fear to Tread chapter, you pick up an item in Claptrap's room. When you do this and accept the quest, you have to take the item all the way to Mount Hellsfront and, well, I think you can see where I'm going with this. The twist is you won't be able to catch a ride or fast travel while you're carrying the item. And don't look to the skies because there aren't any giant eagles ready to fly you all the way to Mount Mount Hellsfront. You're going to have to hoof it the entire way, preferably with a nice little gardening fella by your side. Once you get there, you'll find an enemy called Geary. He'll take the item you carried there and fall into the pool of lava. After this, 3 racks will reward you with some choice loot, and if you haven't picked up on the reference yet, that's pretty much the entire plot of the Lord of the Rings trilogy mapped out in one quest. Number 4, First Draft Gems. Pandora is a world of monsters. Well, technically they're just natural fauna on an alien planet, but they're about as close to monsters as you'll find in any video game franchise. Unsurprisingly, Borderlands 2 upped the nastiness of these beasts you encounter from the first game, and the first one you stumble across is called a bullymong. It's a big creature with a strange name, but you can do something about that. One of the earliest quests has you working for Sir Hammerlock in finding a better name for these strange beasties. Halfway through though, he'll give up and just call them bonafarts when he can't think of anything else, which is pretty much how I write all my jokes actually, and at this point the in-game description for them changes to reflect the new moniker. What's great about this though is that if you abandon the quest at this point, they will continue being called bonafarts for the remainder of the game. Interestingly, this quest reflects a real-life problem the developers had in naming these creatures. Originally, bullymong was just a placeholder that stuck, so they left the final decision up to the player via a quest. Number 3, Handsome Jack almost wasn't a villain. As mentioned, Handsome Jack is one of the most memorable villains of all time, but originally he wasn't even a bad guy at all. Well, kinda. The original idea was for Jack to be less antagonistic and more of a rival for the players in the game. Someone who would show up, rustle your jimmies, but ultimately not be the nemesis he is in the final release. This could, however, explain why Jack feels so well realised in the story, as it's not simply a case of an evil character doing an evil thing because he's evil. As an extra as well, the name Handsome Jack was a mere placeholder Anthony Birch used while crafting the character in development. It's a reference to the lead of Torchwood and Doctor Who favourite John Barrowman, whose character is also called Jack and is, well, he's handsome, isn't he? Honestly, so many of this character's best qualities were just lightning in a bottle, it's amazing. Number 2, the shortest quest took the longest to develop. In games like Borderlands 2, there's a ton of work that goes into making quests fun and achievable because there's so many different variables to juggle. Making everything from enemy placement to item pickups to general pacing can take a lot of time. But interestingly, the shortest quest in Borderlands 2 actually took the longest to code. This is a scenario that can be completed in about 1 to 2 seconds and can be picked up from a guy called Face McShooty. Talk to him, a quest will pop up, and you'll be prompted by Face McShooty to shoot him in the face. Quick, someone insert that joke from Arrested Development where Michael looks in the fridge and he finds a dead dove and he says, well, I don't know what I expected because it's the exact same thing here. Anyways, if the player decides to take this quest, they shoot the guy in the face, obviously, complete the mission, and there we go, job's a good one. As you can imagine, a 1-second quest was supposed to be a cakewalk to develop, but apparently the devs worked on and off it for months according to Anthony Birch, and it was way more hassle than it was probably worth. Number 1, a rather heartfelt and interactive memorial. Companies like Gearbox Software spend millions of dollars putting their games together, so it's highly unlikely that they will do anything to change their code just to please a fan. After all, we're talking about a lot of time and money that's needed to do anything, so it's kind of unreasonable to expect that they can or will fulfill a fan's request. However, there are exceptions, and there's something that was added to Borderlands 2 specifically due to a fan request. Tragically, an avid Borderlands player passed away before the second game made it to release, so his friend Carlo shot out an email to Gearbox on his behalf. Carlo asked if it would be possible to have Claptrap read a short eulogy for his friend Michael, and Gearbox didn't even hesitate. Even better, alongside the eulogy, they also threw Michael into Borderlands 2 as an NPC in his honour. You can find this Vault Hunter in Sanctuary, and he'll even have a weapon to offer you, as well as a trophy to pop for finding him. It's a beautiful homage to someone who loved the game, and it's a shame Michael never got to see himself pixelized within the world that he so loved. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you know these interesting facts about the second Borderlands game? And are there any interesting ones I missed off here? Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.